The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place item 10E, the appointments for available positions on multiple committees on the consent agenda, with the appointees being John Moore to P&Z, Ira Lovelace to P&Z, Wendell Gibson to Parks and Rec, and Marco Nikovich to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Is there any objection to placing that matter on the consent agenda? Alderman Carver?
I guess I'd like to make an addition and also on the Comprehensive Planning Committee remove the current education chair and rename it with just Superintendent of Education.
All right, Alderman Dumas, will you take that as a friendly amendment?
Yes.
To your?
Yeah.
All right. So Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place John Moore on the P&Z Commission, Ira Lovelace on the P&Z Commission, Wendell Gibson on the Parks and Recreation Commission, Marco Nikovich on the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, and to make the Starkville School Superintendent the appointee to which committee?
Comprehensive Planning Committee.
To the Comprehensive Planning Committee. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
Yeah,
all right. Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that has been placed on the consent agenda. Further proposed revisions.
Under board business, consideration of making payment to placemakers, item F, to consent.
All right. The proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place item 10F, the payment of $57,000 for services rendered to date to placemakers on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Alderman Carver.
Would it be some sort of attached invoice or something like that? Is there any kind of attached invoice?
We can make it contingent upon invoice if you'd like
I'd
to.
like to see that.
All right, Alderman Dumas, do you accept that change as friendly?
I do.
All right, so Alderman Dumas's proposed revision is to place the payment of $57,000 to placemakers for services rendered to date on the consent agenda, contingent upon receipt of an invoice from placemakers. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter has been placed on the consent agenda.
Then finally, under personnel, item 2, request authorization to hire Thomas Ware to fill the vacant position of Operator 2, to consent.
All right, the proposed revision is to place item 11, I2, the authorization of the hire of Thomas Ware to fill the vacant position of Operator 2 in the wastewater division of the Public Services Department on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change. Alderman Dumas, do you have further?
I guess finally, to considering Habitat for Humanity item has been pulled from your agenda, do we need to pull their public appearance as well?
Is Mr. Raspberry here? Mr. Raspberry in the audience? All right, we did call him and tell him that was going to happen tonight, so okay. I think that would be in order.
Well, I'd like to remove item 7B under public appearances.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to remove item 7B, a presentation from Habitat for Humanity, from the agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please make note of the change. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do not.
All right, are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda is revised is in order.
So moved.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the consideration of the consent agenda as revised. Is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised has been approved. And you have no minutes before you tonight, so that will move us to comments by the mayor and board. And I have a few comments this evening. First, I'd like to invite everybody to our first annual Mayor's Youth Council banquet, which is going to be this Friday evening at 7 o'clock at the club level in the football stadium. This is a program that we're very excited about and have had a wonderful response from the youth of the community and over the past year, and we look forward to celebrating a successful year. I also would like to recognize that this is Paul Sims' last evening covering the city with the Starkville Daily News. Over the years, I and the other city officials have gotten to know Paul well, as he's not always covered the city, but has always covered various affairs that have involved the city. And Paul, I think I can speak for everybody in saying that you will be truly missed by all of us. I would like to recognize the two newest registered certified floodplain managers in the city of Starkville. Ben Griffith and Edward Kip have been working through workshops and trainings for quite a while now to become certified floodplain managers, and having a couple of certified floodplain managers is something that serves us quite well. So congratulations. All right, at this time I'd like to introduce our newest employees to the city workforce. And we have 3 employees that I'll be introducing tonight. The first is Scott Grice. And it is my pleasure to welcome Scott Grice as our new Systems Network Administrator in the IT department. Scott is originally from Holmes County, Mississippi, and attended East Holmes Academy. He is a graduate of East Mississippi Community College with an associate's degree in information technology. Scott previously worked for 4.5 years at Severstal as their network administrator. Scott is married to Rita Grice, and they are expecting their first child in September. They attend Calvary Baptist Church and Adeton Baptist Church. When Scott isn't busy with work, he enjoys being outdoors, movies, and music. Please join me in welcoming Scott. Now allow me to introduce Andrew Nagel. And it's my pleasure to welcome Andrew as our new GIS coordinator in the Public Services Department. Andrew is originally from Starkville and attended Starkville High School. He graduated in 2005 from Mississippi State University with a degree in meteorology, and then completed a GIS certification from MSU in 2007. Andrew previously worked for Northrop Grumman as their GIS analyst and Columbus Light and Water as their GIS technician. At Columbus, he was responsible for building their geo database. Andrew is married to Athena Nagel, and they have 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 4 horses. Andrew's parents are David and Jody Nagel, and they attend Starkville Community Church. When Andrew isn't busy with work, he enjoys participating in sports. Please join me in welcoming Andrew. And finally, it is my pleasure to introduce Bob Hall, who is our new building official. Bob had the longest walk of the At this time, I'd like to welcome Bob Hall as our new building official. Bob is a native of Montgomery, Alabama. He's a graduate of Auburn University with a bachelor's degree in environmental design and a bachelor's degree in architecture with a management option. Bob previously worked for 25 years for the State of Alabama Building Commission. Prior to his retirement from the state, he served in the role as code architect. In addition to his many years of experience as a building official, Bob is an experienced inspector, builder, and architect. He brings to us a depth of knowledge and experience in floodplain management, asbestos abatement, ADA compliance, and life safety issues. Bob is married and has 3 children. He has been very active in his church, having served as a deacon and Sunday school teacher. Bob has also been active in the exchange student program and participated in the Rotary International Group Study Exchange to India. Please join me in welcoming Bob. And that concludes my comments for the evening. Do we have any comments by the members of the board?
I have a comment.
Alderman Dumas.
2 weeks ago, 2 from this board table called for added transparency with the school board and their processes in hopes that rumors could be squelched and concerned citizens could be provided answers to the drastic moves of the school board and administration over the last couple of months. In the past 2 weeks, nothing has occurred, no significant information has been released, and the rumor mill is in full force, frankly causing the citizenry of this community to lose trust in the work of the school board. The lack of information oftentimes does more damage than the information itself, and this is proving to be the case here. The only bit of information that has been released over the past couple of weeks is a letter from the school board president, Pickett Wilson, justifying their action by stating an attorney general's opinion about the legal obligations of a school board as it pertains to executive sessions. This letter ended with, and I quote, "All the board's decisions and actions are within the law," end quote. This assertion of legal justification does nothing to calm the nerves, doubt, and fear of the parents of students in the Starkville School District. Perhaps instead of legal justification, it should be communicated from the board and their president the importance of the ethics of keeping mum the immediate departure of the district CEO. Perhaps instead of touting a result of compliance from an investigation by the Ethics Commission, they should leave the importance of communication or learn the importance of communication and transparency, the both of which caused the lack of both which caused the Ethics Commission investigation. This isn't rocket science. The past year has been filled with complaints of the school board that result from the same issues. Their blatant disregard to listening to citizens, having open meetings, and communicating issues and concerns with the general public. Do I want to see how sausage is made? You have to forgive me for my southern Mississippi roots here. Do I want to see how sausage is made? No, because I want to eat it. But I never buy sausage that tastes bad, looks bad, smells, or that I don't generally trust. I hate to use sausage as an analogy of board business, but it actually fits. And this sausage stinks, the package is bad, and no one is buying it. The lawful veil of secrecy can prevail no longer. It hasn't worked or helped any of the issues of the past year. From the uniforms to the departure of the superintendent, people expect more. People want to know more. People want to work with the district. People want to believe in something they trust. And they will not support something that they don't trust. Now we're on the cusp of a hiring process for the next superintendent, perhaps the single biggest issue undertaken and decided by the school board in recent history. I don't know the full history, but I doubt that there's ever been a time where fewer people believed and trusted the leaders and direction of the Starkville School District. This hire has to be right. It has to be forward-thinking, and most importantly, it must result from a process that builds coalition and trust. Anything less will continue and only increase the divide between the school board and the people of the school district. I doubt the school board as currently structured can do what is needed. By law, I am sure that the process can match the secrecy of the papal conclave. But our citizens have far less trust in the members of the Catholic Church, and we want to be part of the process. A special call meeting is occurring tomorrow at 3 p.m. for the school board to have a decision about the upcoming selection and hiring process. It is my hope that during this meeting, the school board take a long, hard look at themselves and their process and take needed action to put in place the individuals and framework that will result in a process that is open and respects the thoughts of those most concerned about this school district. By taking no action and creating no change, the board will have spoken and told the district that it is business as usual. Unfortunately, we, the Board of Aldermen, have very little authority concerning members of the school board once appointed. Unless a felony, gambling, the IRS, or unsound mind is involved, we can't be involved. And yes, I did look what was meant by unsound mind. But even though we can't intervene, the school board can self-regulate. And I ask, from both my official position as an alderman, as well as my position as a proud parent, that they do self-regulate. Take the needed steps, get this ship back on course, and devise a plan, a process, and a board organizational structure that doesn't continue as the lightning rod of this community. This is more than just a hiring process. This is about educating our children. This is about economic development. This is about community pride and quality of life. This is about doing things differently than they have been done in the past. You, the school board, are claiming to have followed the law. Now follow the wishes of the majority and do what is right. No one wants to sit outside the Greensboro Center eating bad sausage waiting for colored smoke indicating the decision of the school board. I've reduced this to writing so that it can be in the minutes.
Do we have any further comments by the members of the board? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the recognition to my colleagues on this board, to the staff, and to all of the members of the public. I'd like to make some comments regarding school board matters. I support Alderman Dumas' concerns regarding this very important school and community matter. I addressed it at the last board meeting, and I find that the controversy has not abated. The lack of confidence in the leadership of the school board continues to undermine the credibility of the school district and the community as a whole. This lack of confidence calls for positive and immediate action to restore the public faith in the governing body. It is incumbent on the city's leadership to assist in restoring public confidence. In my opinion, the immediate resignation of the president from the school board would go far to setting right the perceived wrongs. I foster no personal animosity, malice, or ill will toward the school board's president, but believe that under the present circumstances, she should resign from the board. The president and the rest of the school board need to act immediately and decisively to dispel the criticism and thereby offer the school district the best opportunity to attract candidates for the position of superintendent who will be of a caliber able to meet the challenges of the position. I want to continue to stress the importance of the school board in its role as a policy-making body that refrains from micromanaging the day-to-day operations of the Starkville School District. Members of the school board must not inject themselves into the daily administration and operations of the school district. Normally, I am favorably inclined to support the continued interest of those who have been selected to serve in positions of authority when they are up for reappointment. However, when the incumbent is the center of controversy, and when such controversy is not in the best interest of the community, then I must withdraw my support for such a candidate. I will not be supporting Ms. Wilson if she decides to seek a reappointment to the school board in 2012. It is my hope that the school board will immediately take the appropriate action to properly address the concerns of the public, and that this matter will no longer plague our community as we search for the next superintendent for our community and our children's future. Mr. Mayor, I have likewise reduced this to writing, and I'd like for the clerk to likewise place this in the minutes. And thanks for the recognition.
Do we have any further comments by the members of the board? Alderman Carver.
I'd just like to publicly thank Matthew Rye, if he's in here, and the Parks and Rec Commission. They completed a fence on the Patriots Park, which is over in Ward 1, and not only for an aesthetic purpose, but a safety purpose. They completed the fencing last week, and it looks good and it's safe. So thank you, Matthew, wherever you're at.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. And any citizen wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Greeting to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. To the vice mayor and the absent Alderman Vaughn.
Thank you, Alvin.
Citizens have a few concerns. The first one is on Long Street, we need to erect a dangerous curve sign. That is a very snaky curve, dangerous, and you have houses that right at the road. We need a dangerous curve sign as you come off 82 to let people know that there's a dangerous curve, and when you're approaching coming back to 82, that there's a dangerous curve. We also would like signs erected on both ends, and we also like signs erected on both ends of Washington Street with the overhead, the 9 feet clearance coming from Piggly Wiggly and coming from this way, that they will know that that's only 9 feet clearance, because that can be very dangerous. The parking situation on Lafayette Street is getting to be dangerous. You can't get through with the way that the cars are parked. That makes it very dangerous to try to squeeze, not hit nobody to get to out the street that's adjacent. And we have one announcement. The NACP is having their banquet on the 27th of this month at Sportsplex at 7 o'clock. The guest speaker will be John Dupree. And we have 2 honorees, our Assistant Chief John Outlaw and our City Clerk Marquita Outlaw.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments?
Milo Burnham from Ward 2. Well, it's now becomes a matter of public record that the city has a $1 investment in the landscaping of the beds on Main Street. And since, not to my knowledge, does the city employ a horticulturist, and also to my knowledge that the city or that there is a contract with Southern Groundkeepers, I think effective the 1st of June, to look after that plant material. I just think that you should be aware of the fact that as of now, that plant material for which you have an investment is not being taken care of, and that there is a portion of it which is dead, and there is going to be more of it which will be dead if something isn't done. And as a taxpayer in the city, I am concerned also as a horticulturist. It hurts me to see plant material put out there, and having worked on that, to see it not taken care of.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances. And we have one scheduled public appearance for this evening, and that is from Matthew Ryan, Heather Carson, to tell you about a program that I'm very excited about, and I won't steal their thunder. I'll just tell you that I like it a lot.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. I'm going to give you just a kind of a brief overview of what the application and program is about, and I'll let Heather explain her role, and we'll keep it pretty brief. The Playful City USA is the only national designation that recognizes cities and towns across the nation for their value of importance of play. It was created in 2007 by a nonprofit organization, Kaboom. It recognized last year 118 cities. Only 3 in the state of Mississippi were recognized last year for implementing action plans to reverse the play deficit that we are seeing nationwide. And completing this application is really the first step in that process to increase spaces to play opportunities in our community. And during this process of application process, we were charged with creating a framework that based on 5 commitments. And those 5 commitments are, the first one is to create a local task force. Our goal was to demonstrate private and public partnership by including government, business, and community representatives. And I think we created that, we accomplished that goal in creating that task force. The second commitment was to design an annual action plan for play. We identified specific steps in really 3 areas: the quality of play, the quantity of play, and the access of play opportunities. And this is where we focus 90% of our time and energy in our meetings. And so I'm pretty sure we've included a draft in your packet to kind of highlight and look at some of the action plans that the task force came up with and thought it was important to move forward on. And then our third commitment was to conduct a play space audit of all public accessible play areas. And this was a self-assessment tool to help us map, audit, document the inventory of all play spaces. It was loaded to a national public database that was free and open to everyone, and that is completed. And then we were to identify current spending on capital projects and also maintenance on all play areas. And then fifth, we are to proclaim and celebrate an annual play date, which we are currently working on. We think September 17th or 18th will be that day, and you'll hear about the details as we move forward. So what are the benefits of becoming a Playful City USA? Well, there's many, but briefly I just mentioned 4. Hopefully this will start a process where we can create a generation that's happier, smarter, and healthier. And second is we want to increase the awareness of the benefits and availability of play in our community. And then the last 2, we're very, one of the reasons why we're doing this is to earn priority status and access to grant opportunities that have totaled over $5 million since 2007. And then the 4th reason is the same thing, is to gain eligibility for over $2 million in Let's Play grants available only to cities that are selected as a Playful City. So we are excited about it. I want to thank Mayor and Heather especially, who's sitting beside me, for her dedication and her hard work towards this project. So I'm going to let her take over.
Well, and thank you. And I really appreciate you letting us come and share kind of what we've been working on. As mentioned before, it's a really diverse group that is on our task force. One of the things that we all had a primary philosophy on and where we're headed is the commitment to play in the Starkville area. This is just a favorite quote that we've used over and over again in the Go Play initiative, which is part of what we've started with the Starkville School District, and now would like to expand into the city. Obviously, it says we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing, which could fit with our city in general as well. There's really 3 primary components that go to our mission, and that is looking for community support for play, whether that is coming from dialogue with the Play Task Force or actual commitment and support from civic organizations, churches, or other schools within our community. The second component, which is critical, will be community resources and sharing that. One of the areas on the action plan you have in front of you is talking about shared use agreements between the city school district and the City Parks Commission, looking at ways for us to decrease costs but increase access to play around our city. And then finally, the last component is community action. We pulled together a photo from civic leaders in the junior auxiliary that have already invested over $10,000 last year just on play space alone in terms of upkeep, as well as 65 hours of volunteer time. The commitment and the leadership is there. We're looking at also pursuing a Starkville Parks Foundation, a 501c3 that could be tax deductible donations with an emphasis on play. So this was taken last week over at McKee Park, and I know all of us have been to our different parks, but making it a commitment for play around our city is something that we care deeply about and are committed to working on over the next couple of years.
Do we have any questions or comments from the members of the board? Any questions or comments from the members of the board?
I just want to thank y'all for putting this together. This is great.
Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you for what you do. All right. That will carry us to the presentation by Placemakers LLC on the workshop that they have conducted for the past week in the community. And while you're getting everything set up, let me just provide a few introductory comments and say that I think those of you that have made it out to the meeting tonight, I see many faces that participated in the workshop this week, are in for a real treat. And I think one of the reasons this will be such a treat is we had such a good response from leaders of various organizations in this community that sat with this consultant team and added perspective about this community. So you very much played a part in building what you're about to see. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan Norris.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor. It's great to be back here. If you recall, myself and my business partner, Howard Blackson, right here, we were here last fall to talk about the different steps we thought Starkville could take to enhance the community, and that's what we wanted to be able to do an overview. One quick question, that is sort of a point of order. If somebody has a question while I'm presenting, can I answer?
It's your show.
Okay, great. So if any of you have a question while I'm going through this, I'd be happy to stop and talk about it in greater detail. Once again, we're with Placemakers. We are a group of 7 folks who do work across the United States and North America, and we've brought in a team of 11 different people essentially to work on this process. And you can go to starkvillecorridors.com, and that's where you can find out more about this process. Later this week, we'll be updating this website with most of the information from this presentation this evening. So if you'd like to learn more, we encourage you to go there. And you can see the project team members, etc. That's the website.
And comments. And you can make comments, and we'll respond to comments as well on the website.
Absolutely. Okay, what we were doing this week is we were looking at 4 different corridors within Starkville. This was not an effort to go the entire width of the city, just 4 distinct corridors or streets, or thoroughfares as we call them, and to come up with a overlay zoning code that could be applied to those corridors. All right, here's the study area. To orient everyone, we're right about here right now, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so our corridors were to look at 182, was to look at Main Street continuing into University Drive, and then Russell Street, and then Lambton. So those were the 4 places within the community that we were tasked with formalizing the plans and going ahead and creating a code. So that's the study area. All right, that's another way to look at it, is all those lots are within the scope of what we've been hired to do. Okay, last Wednesday we initiated the design on site here, And we've been here since that time. Last Thursday and Friday, we met with about 25 different groups to discuss their thoughts and concerns with the overall process and the future of Starkville. And then we're doing what we call the work in progress presentation this evening to show you where we are, but we're not done tonight. What we'll be doing is we'll go back home and we'll continue to work on this project, and within 4 weeks, we will draft a proposed code that will have the details about essentially what we're going to be talking about tonight. Okay, the first thing to mention is that Starkville is competing for people, whether it likes it or not. I mean, every city is always competing, and to me, that's what this process is really about, because I see unmet potential in Starkville. And so that's why we're talking about that. And in terms of competitiveness, to me, it's essentially an economic development opportunity. Okay, if you produce a better neighborhood, a better city, a better region, you'll be able to more effectively compete for those who are considering to move to this area or moving somewhere else. Okay, and what we have learned since we've been here is that the university is essentially a gigantic economic engine. What if you were in another city, let's say 2 counties over, and they said, we're going to move a university into your community, and we're going to, we'll probably educate a little over 20,000 people a year. I mean, think about what that would mean to a community. And so that is a huge opportunity. And as we looked at this project, what we were looking at was essentially how can we increase the attractiveness of this city to everyone, essentially everywhere. How do you make it a place where more students want to come to the university? How do we make it where we have more businesses that want to relocate here? What are the things that might be missing that we can enhance? And one of the ideas was to think in terms of the community in different character zones. For example, this is an image of a place where you can drive down the street, you can bike down the street, you can walk up and down. It's a very pleasant, what we would refer to as an urban area, a place that's essentially in a downtown. This is a downtown southern city. Many of you may have been here before. It's Greenville, South Carolina. A wonderful main street. But that's one type of character that right now there isn't enough of this in Starkville from our point of view. We have other character zones which are just fine as well. We have nice subdivisions that people will want to move into in this area. We have other areas which are commercial retail areas, unlike our downtown area here, where it's really just a drive-only sort of character zone. Okay, we were not tasked with figuring out or thinking about changing any of these places. Once again, the idea for economic development is to provide a range of options, the full range, because not everybody's the same. If you're trying to attract the widest range of businesses, you want the widest range of environments. And so that's what we've looked at. One of the interesting things we noted is that you have a nice research park that has businesses that are interested in tapping into the resources of the university, or at least that's our understanding of it. And I just wanted to show you a couple of places where the high-tech companies are moving today, because they're not all moving to research parks. Now they're wanting to locate in downtowns and things of that nature. For example, this is where a high-tech biotech company decided to move. Instead of out to the research park, they wanted to move into the downtown of Seattle. Another example would be, if you have a computer, you know who Adobe is, and they decided to locate in the downtown setting as opposed to out in a research park. So one of the things that we have looked at is there's a real opportunity not just to offer one option, but to offer a couple different options for those companies who are looking to tap into the resources of the university in Starkville. Now, our effort is essentially building upon the effort of the Main Street shred that occurred about a month and a half ago. Okay, so that was sort of the starting point for us, is we took the resources that were already there. They did a lot of facilitation with a lot of community members, and we're building upon that. But one of the big things to come out of that was this notion of being branded Mississippi's college town. So once again, that's how you might build yourself up as a competitor to other businesses, is to build upon the strengths of that effort. Now, some of the recommendations that came out of that Main Street shred were, number one, was that Starkville should do a better job of connecting customers, that is residents, students, visitors, to the downtown. Okay. The other big recommendation was to pursue the overlay zoning that we've been responsible for developing. And that means allowing for more mixed-use development where you have a mixture of uses in a single building. Okay, instead of just saying it all has to be commercial or it all has to be residential, you could do both. You could allow for denser development in certain character zones. You could allow for zero lot lines and reduced parking in certain areas. And you could increase flexibility in exchange for higher design standards. And I'm going to go into those in detail, but that's where we're starting. Now, this is probably the biggest idea that we're going to touch upon, and that has to do with Russell Street. Okay? And in Russell Street, the interesting thing about Russell Street, amongst many other things, is that it's historically the connection to the university. Okay, so that's where we understand the rail actually came, went from this area and tied in to the, what do you call it, the quad? What's the
drill field. The drill field.
The drill field. Okay, and so it connected the two. And so this is the entrance into Mississippi State right here. This is University Boulevard. So Russell comes all the way up here. This was the Main Street charrette plan that they came up with not too long ago. And that was the starting point for us. And, and one of the things that came very early in our research was that we met with the university's planner. And we met with their planning team, Sasaki Associates, and we talked about what they were trying to do. And the interesting thing was they were tasked with trying to connect the university to the city of Starkville. That was one of their jobs, and then we were hired to try to connect the city to the university. And so we were very curious about their plans. And as we studied their plans, we started looking at these different roads. There was 182, okay, which was the first almost bypass of the downtown that was built. And then your history had 12 becoming the bypass around downtown. And now you've got 82 being the bypass around town. Okay, and so we've got lots of bypasses, but we have two roads that are no longer really the bypasses that they once were, 182 and 12. So, and then we have this area which separates MSU from the city, and we've got essentially a highway condition that creates what some people refer to as the Great Divide between the city and the university. So we looked at that and we said, well, Russell Street is very important. Why don't we look to see how other universities handle this? But the first thing was to look at how Mississippi State is handling it. And let me orient you. This is basically the core of the campus here. Okay, and then this is where we are right now in the downtown area of Starkville. Okay, just so you know, that's about 1.5 miles. The question is, how are we competing? How are we competing? How are we doing against the other folks in the SEC? If it's a football game, how are we doing? Okay, and so we look toward Tuscaloosa. We look at their core campus. You can see this is the center of their campus. This is their downtown. They're about this, a little less, but almost the same distance. A good walk, And the nature of that walk, it varies. If we look back here to where we are, if you go on, the nature of the connection is strong in some places, not as strong in others. For example, a lot of people, if they were to drive or walk, if they were going to walk or bike, they'd go University Drive. If you're going to try to go by car, you might go on Russell because it's sort of easier to get in once you're in Mississippi State. But anyways, the quality of that connection is just as important as the distance. But that's what we're looking at here. Once again, that's about a mile. Then we look to Ole Miss in Oxford, and once again, you can see they're closer, and than even here, and the quality of that is pretty strong. You go to a place like Auburn, there's the university, and then there's essentially the town center. They're immediately adjacent. And what does that, does anybody have an idea, what does that result in? How does that change the How would it be totally different?
I lived outside of Princeton, and it's like there at all.
Okay.
Students, much less commuting, everything.
Okay, so not everybody needs a car if they can, to spend money. That's one of the reasons to have the connection is to spend money. Now, if I don't need to get in the car to do it, then that's a better thing. What happens after a football game when you win at Auburn? What do they do?
NCAA
they go
sanctions.
immediately.
You buy your quarterback a new car.
I'm sorry, Nathan,
You don't
I'm
even have to
sorry.
give him the car. You don't even have to, no, but seriously, you go to Toomer's Corner, right? And that's where they roll the toilet paper after the victories. They don't sit around the stadium. You know, they go immediately where all the merchants are in the city of Auburn. And the city of Auburn makes a ton of money. I was there at the, actually when they beat LSU last year. I never go to Auburn, but a friend had tickets and I said, sure, I'd love to see this Cam Newton guy. But anyways, they wanted, tons of people spending money right there. That's where they celebrate. And that's a pretty good thing. 0 miles at Auburn. Okay, in Georgia, we're looking at the connection there. Once again, it's a great, there's the town of Athens, here's the university, so it's 0 miles, it's connected immediately. And that's what we believe, if you really want to be competitive and take advantage of the dollars that come from alumni, visitors, students, all those different entities can really add vitality to Starkville. We're looking at how can we connect them. Okay, so here's the basic plan. Here's the basic idea. This is 12 revision. Okay, because once again, it was told to us that it was the great divide. So our idea is take away the division, make it easier to connect the university directly to the city of Starkville. And this is in a plan, so maybe boring to some of you, but we're going to show pictures. One of the key issues is to sort of balance the needs of people who are going to be walking or on bikes with those of cars. Okay, and the big issue has to do with speed. Along 12 right now, guess what? It's a highway condition, so you can go pretty fast. We even learned from the police that they actually get a fair amount of revenue off of 12 because it's in a geometry that allows you to naturally go fast. It's hard to stay at the speed limit. The cars go generally about 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour. And that means that your chances, this is what happens when a car hits you at 40 miles an hour, essentially you're going to die. Okay, if you're at 30, you almost have a 50-50 chance. If you're at 20, all of a sudden you have about a 5% chance. So it's a radical change in what happens. And even though we're not experts in speed, we can sort of intuitively understand when our life is threatened. So you'll find places where the cars are going 25 or less, people will be happy to eat right there next to the street practically. Okay? And that's what we found in other areas of Starkville is that that's actually the case. So that's really what we're looking at is how can we re-envision that road so that people can feel comfortable in that space and not see it as a major divide where you can only get around by doing that. And by the way, there is, come on in. There is actually new engineering standards that have even been adopted by the Texas Department of Transportation, which make what we're about to show you in a visualization completely legal, which historically it wasn't. So that's the existing condition. Okay, so that's what it looks like if you're on the University Drive Bridge looking south. This is Russell. This is going into the main entrance of the university. This is going back into Starkville. Here's the cotton mill area.
South on 12. Say it.
South on 12. Is that good? Okay, so the first idea is you're changing lanes. Okay, you're adding what we call access lanes on the side. Okay, here we have two travel lanes, just like we have now, 2 travel lanes. We have 2 through lanes here, just like we do now. But now we've got a dedicated turn lane here, a dedicated turn lane here, and then we have these side access roads. These side access roads allow economic development to happen on the edges. So you can add things like these buildings that can be commercially viable when people are willing to be outside. So, once again, you could put a fountain here to encourage people to be here. You've got a bike path here, a bike path here. You've got people walking everywhere. You can put buildings in here. We actually studied the full dimensions of this corridor and this right-of-way. So all of this was just not sort of fanciful thinking on our part. It will cost money, but you can be creative about how it gets paid for. Essentially, it's a MDOT road, and there are grants that are competitive grants on the federal level that can pay for these transformations. Okay, and so I think that this is something that would be a high priority for the city of Starkville in order to increase, once again, the connection between the university and the city. Now, our transportation engineer, Rick Hall, is the one who came up with this, and he thought it might be fun to call it the Grand Boulevard, but we'll leave it to y'all what you want to do. Okay. The next area that we looked at was Main Street. We think that your Main Street is pretty good. So we didn't think that there was much work to be done. There was essentially one big deficiency. And by the way, at the Main Street charrette, they looked at different ways, like how to fix up corners like this with murals and things like that. They also essentially came up with a plan for the area, which was largely keeping it the way it was, except to try to terminate the view of the Main Street. This is Main Street, this is where you go down, this is where you turn at the end. And their idea was to place some sort of civic art to terminate your view in the Main Street. We think that's a wonderful recommendation that you should follow, and that should be followed up on. The question has to do with this generic idea of enclosure and outdoor rooms. This is just a regular residential street, but a lot of people think this is really charming because the trees form a canopy over the street, and it feels warmer and more inviting. Okay, you can also create a sense of enclosure by terminating a view with artwork like we just talked about, or with a building or something like that. And that's what we thought was really missing in your downtown, was some sort of a sense of enclosure as well as a civic space. Okay, a civic space. Like in most towns, you might have a courthouse square that serves as the location for celebrations as well as times when you come together to mourn. In this case, what if you win the national championship? Okay, where would you go in Starkville to celebrate? I don't know. Where would you go?
Keep going, Nate.
Okay.
You don't have that much of an information.
Really? You were just, what, $160,000 away last year? Okay. That's really close when you think about it. Okay. Now, this is Cadence Bank. It's like the big bunker. This is Regions Bank. This is one of the ideas to create a sense of enclosure as well as provide a civic space that can be that ceremonial space. So it's doing two different jobs, sense of enclosure as well as providing a civic space. And what happens is right now you have, I guess, about 6 lanes going through there, including the parking area. And the idea is to create one lane that is dedicated turn lane over onto, I think this is Lafayette? Jackson. Over onto Jackson. And then you have one through lane as well as a lane that turns right. Okay, and then you continue to have your one lane that goes this way. We had talked with somebody from the bank who said, if you could do this, we'd be willing to look at giving up our on-street parking because we have so much parking to the rear and on the side. So what might that look like? Howard, did you want to describe this as?
Oh, just saying, you need a civic space somewhere. It can't really be a square like in other towns, but it can extend the plaza because the plaza right now is so small that if you had an extended plaza with some sort of pavilion, you could have family reunions, you can have your outdoor pops, you can hold events here from one end of downtown that closes it to where your sculpture is on the other end of downtown that's proposed. And we also recommend that sculpture civic art at the other end should be something with the school. That would help relate the campus to downtown. So it's just a matter of trying to enclose those 2 blocks. So when you're downtown, you're downtown. You're not looking off in the distance to space, just sky. You're looking at civic spaces, civic buildings.
Taking existing right of way and making something better. Yes, sir.
So I was born and reared in Starkville, Mississippi. I was 59 years old. I know every square inch of Starkville. Changed the names of places, but I know where everything is. Every street in Starkville. They have some new names, but I know what they used to be. Back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Then I went to college in Kansas, then I came to Mississippi State from 72 to 79, and then I went to State some more years in 2000 to 2003. So I know Starkville. But what I'm trying to say is I was going down 12 one day trying to cross the highway. And it was clear on the right-hand side of the street. I went down past light. I was going to POI Incorporated, Pearl Opportunity, to check on a bill that I couldn't handle. So I went across the highway. I got in the middle lane, and some idiot came right up on me. He would have ran over me and seen me. It was students. So something needs to be done about ripping and running down the highway. Because they drive to bank. Handicapped people are never considered.
Right. Well, we agree. That's why we recommended the 12 change. Because, just to be clear, 12 was originally the bypass. It's no longer the bypass. And what I didn't mention before is the amount of traffic that goes from Spring Street to Russell Street. Okay, it's essentially like a sprint for a very short period of time, and then you're at a stoplight again. So it's really serving no useful purpose as far as capacity. Our multi-way boulevard that Rick Hall designed actually increases the number of cars that can get through because we've actually added lanes, but they're going at a much slower speed so that we can, make it so that people don't get run over.
Last question. Since we're done, June, July, and August is a month for family reunion. Everybody wants to have a family reunion. How much do y'all charge for those spaces each?
I'm not charging anything.
This would be, the idea is this would be free because it's public land.
Free?
That's right. That's the idea. But everything costs something to build.
Well, it sure does. You got to bring all those children, wagging all the town, everything.
Right.
It's a mess.
But right now, you don't have many places that you can have a family reunion for free. You have to rent a hall, or you have to rent an indoor facility. That's why we think the downtown should have an open space generous enough with a pavilion that could hold events for the public.
And it's up for y'all to decide
And what it is.
what that is.
Sure.
But that's good.
For people meeting in a small, low income. Coco offers family reunion space all summer long. Here's the whole bill for $100.
Thank you.
That's a deal. All right, parking management. Okay, this is something that we're just going to touch on. This is not something that was within our scope, but just so you know, parking can be a big problem if you don't think about how to manage it. All right, and these are the 4 big issues when you're going to thinking about how you might manage parking going forward. One is to think about what the alternatives to driving are. So you do shuttles. Do you have enough bike racks so that it's convenient for somebody actually to ride a bike when it's nice out? Do you have bike lanes to make it safer for people to bike? Do you have signage pointing where you can park? Those are some issues. Fee structure, that is the easiest way to manage parking, is to vary the pricing depending upon the location. Okay? So if it's a really desirable place, you charge more. And if it's not desirable, meaning farther away typically, then you charge less. And so you have to do that. And now we have machines that can handle that, and that's another big issue. Mixed use captures trips. That is to say that if more people live there, they don't have to drive there. So that's one way to manage it. The other thing is that different uses have different parking needs at different times, so you might be able to reduce the cost of providing parking. And then finally, you should look at establishing a parking or transit improvement district.
With the college, with the university.
In conjunction with the university, and essentially the fees that get generated don't go to your general fund, they go toward improvements in that area that you're trying to manage the parking. And that's critical. A lot of people have tried to do it, and then it goes in the general fund, and then it all falls apart. Okay? Can't do that. On transit, these are the 4 big issues we see as you look with a partnership perhaps with the university. You're asked to just touch upon this, and you've got to determine, are you focused simply on high ridership, or are you trying to provide service to everyone? You have to understand what it's needed. You have to have dignified facilities. If it's a miserable if it's a miserable experience, it's not going to be well written, so that's an issue. And then finally, how do you fund sort of transit? Is it possible here to actually put a tax on alcohol? I don't know. I saw some poster that suggested it looked like the drunk poster.
Yeah.
Where it would send kids back to the university or something. I don't know, but you can make the transit free.
There appears to be an acceptable level of drunken driving that's kind of dangerous around here that we think this could be addressed through your transit parking.
Okay. Without going into great controversy,
I went there.
Controversy.
I went there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Lampkin Street, we talked about Russell, let's talk about Lampkin. That's the street that connects Russell essentially to the downtown. And this is where we get into this issue. We mentioned this briefly last fall, which was the idea of, what we're really concerned about doing is not coming up with a code that regulates what things necessarily look like. It's how they function. Okay, and it's the same design task is figuring out where do you put the steering wheel in a car? Do you put it on the right? Do you put it on the left? Do you put it in the trunk? It's not very functional in the trunk. So we got to, those are the sorts of things that we would be regulating to make sure that everything works. On Lampkin Street, this is actually the plan diagram. This is on the, as you're going west, this would be the west side, this is the east side. But you have angled parking right now, parallel parking on this side, and 2 travel lanes. And essentially you can retain that street design just fine. What I wanted to be able to talk about is what are ordinarily referred to as frontages. These are the key details. These are the functional details, not aesthetic details. They're things like, do we have trees? You know, a tree isn't an aesthetic consideration in a town like Starkville. Why? Because it gets hot, okay? And a tree, you know, if you're walking through a forest in the summer, is a lot different than walking out in the open sun in the middle of a parking lot. And so it's critical that street trees be part of the places where you're trying to have a character in the zone, where people are going to want to walk or bike, etc. So we have a furniture, you know,
or shop.
Essentially, or shop, sure. So we have trees that we are concerned about. We have walkways, making sure they're wide enough, okay? And that happens before you get, the gray represents the private building. So this would be the street. Then you have the trees or the furnishings and a walkway, and then you have the buildings. You know, another way to look at it is that this is where the trees would be, this is where the sidewalk would be, and then you have a private dwelling or building that's represented there. Our code will be similar to this as we go ahead and continue to tweak it, but essentially we'll show how buildings can be placed on the lot, how high they can be, how low they can be, what can happen in them, and then we'll be dealing with all those frontage details about on the private lots there. And we do that through things like setbacks, etc., all the boring planning things. Now, if we're looking for a character zone that's got that more, what we usually refer to as an urban environment, that is simply a more town setting, then these are the things we're trying to avoid. Okay, there's just really six of them. One is gaps. You know, for example, if you have a building that gets torn down on your downtown Main Street and they put in a surface parking lot and it's just an empty gap, okay, that's how a lot of downtowns have been killed, is through the gaps. And it's because it blows the sense of enclosure that we're looking for. If you have unsafe or inadequately sized walkways, you know, where you can't even get around safely, then that's a problem. If you don't have trees that keep you cool in the summer, then that's a problem. If you have a bunch of, if the front of your building has a bunch of, it essentially has a big parking lot in front of it, that's another thing that loses that sense of enclosure and we don't really like. If you don't have any windows if you have just a blank wall, that's another thing that can really kill it, because, you know, essentially humans have a very short attention span. Yes, sir.
This is a long story short. What's the census take for 2011 for Starkville? Just Starkville, not the university. Just Starkville. How many people live?
I don't know. How many people?
23,868.
How many?
23,868.
23,868
That's
people.
not much of an increase. When I went to school in 1970, it was just 10,000. And the school I went to in Kansas only had 10,000 people. But they were a little bit more advanced than Starkville.
It's growing. Okay, so one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to go ahead and create essentially a map of the lots that we've been tasked with regulating through the plan. And this is called our character zone map right now. And we can talk about it, but the different colors represent the different calibrations of the different characters in this specific place.
Why didn't you use red and blue?
The red
and
is
yellow?
civic.
Why did you use yellow?
I don't know.
We did notice the colors are not red, blue, or yellow, which denotes single use. Red's commercial, yellow usually housing, blue is usually industrial. This is intending for each one of these corridors to have some sort of mixed use associated with it. So that's why we don't use those colors, but we did use red to show where is the civic spaces that are not on the table at all.
Now, one of the big questions that some people have asked is, well, what happens, let's say you adopt this character zone map, what happens, let's say, you've got a building right here. Okay, well, the nature of the code would be set up so that nothing happens until the person wants to substantially change what they're doing today. So everything essentially gets grandfathered, but if you're moving forward, then the character zone would apply. Now, a lot of your community is zone C2, okay, which is a commercial designation. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, since you're the planning guy. C2 does not allow any residential, correct?
Not our right.
Not right, so you'd have to ask for a
Conditional
variance.
use permit.
Conditional use and all that sort of
Rezone.
stuff. Okay, so C2 normally prohibits residential apartments, right? Okay, now, this is a nice looking building and everything. In a character zone, once again, we wouldn't allow a parking area in front of the building because that would interfere with those frontage details we were talking about before. And so we looked at all sorts of nice apartments and places here in Starkville. They were, perfectly nice, but they would be illegal in the character zone because here you have a bunch of parking on the front of the street here. So even though those are nice, here you have a bunch of parking. There's no street trees, there's no sidewalk, there's no none of that. Here's another example. Once again, you just have the parking lot in front. This is not the place you want to be in August walking down the street necessarily, unless you have the opportunity to get in the car. Here's another one in a nice area that's heavily treed. The parking lot's out in front. Here's another one on Russell Street, just the parking lot is out in front. Here's one in your historic area where it's just a big parking lot in the front of the apartment. Here's off College View. Once again, typically you just got all the parking in the front. That would not be permissible under the code that we're writing. Okay. Same thing here on University Drive. You have this sea of parking, which really nobody is thinking is adding to the charm and the vitality of that area there. Okay, so what does C2 produce today? Okay, well, I found out about the Purple Elephant, and Lampkin was one of the buildings that appeared to have been built after the zoning had kicked in. I don't know if that's true or not, but the building essentially adheres to the rules, as best we can tell. And you can see, because essentially they just put the parking in front. All right? What we're suggesting is that we change the nature of that zoning on a street like Lampkin, where we're going to try to make it a stronger connector to the university. And so how might we do that? This is the existing condition. This is what's perfectly legal. We've got the parking out here in front. Here's the Purple Elephant. Here's the street. So what's the deal? I'm going to show you how this transforms. But the deal is that essentially, in exchange for predictability and having a wider range of what can be built or how you can use your lot, then you'd have increased restrictions on the form and the placement of your building. Okay, so we have some visualizations to say, okay, well, here's the Purple Elephant again, right here, okay, and you've got the on-street parking right here, but the additional parking would have to be in the back of the store, okay, around the corner, on this, over on the side. So you get there through a driveway. That way we still get our trees, our planting strip, our walkway, and we get that sense of enclosure that makes this a much more charming area. Now, that's not the only option you would have if we changed the code, okay? Because that's just a single-story commercial building. We want to talk about a variety of options. So that's what that looks like right now, is bringing the building up here. You have the driveway, you have plenty of parking out here that you could have for the excess parking. But you could also build something that's multi-story there. You could have the Purple Elephant here on the first floor, and then you could have offices on the second floor, or you might have somebody who could live there. Okay? You might even be able to have a gallery over there, like you've got some here on Main Street. So that might be an option. All right, so that's essentially just looking at that. By the way, what changed there is we had additional parking in the back to accommodate the second story. So that could happen. Yes, ma'am.
The Purple Elephant, how do you propose retrofitting parking into that area? I don't know what's...
You don't. Once again, the answer is that the Purple Elephant doesn't change until it decides to substantially change its building.
It kicks in when it...
That's right. They might decide that with this zoning, they could make more money building something new than not, or they could say, we like it just the way it is, and we're going to keep it the way it is, right now. So...
You went so fast. What is the Purple
It's just a typical, it's an example.
Okay. It's a gift shop and clothing
example
shop.
of a commercial building. It used to be it was a house.
Commercial building. Now, under this zoning, you could also have residential townhomes, which are exactly what's to the left of this block anyhow already. Right now, the C2 designation doesn't get that as of right, correct, Ben? Okay, so you could have townhomes there, that's the, that's the plan, there is, how you, well, actually, that's not correct. Or finally, you could do an apartment building, which would be also another unit, meeting the market demand, but only if it's configured in place and designed under certain circumstances. Okay, so there, all right, now that's just, this is one of the issues that has popped up. A lot of this stuff is not easy. And one of the challenges, especially for the aldermen here, is to avoid the cheap date. It's easy to accept a project because it's new and it's going to create some economic value. But the purpose of having these codes is to go ahead and have certain standards so that you can effectively compete against others and increase that competition with the other cities we mentioned. Okay, let's move on to 182. You may want to talk some about this, Howard. But essentially, 182 is right here. Here's the main street. We're down here right now. Okay, so it's right up and down here. And the interesting thing we found out was essentially 182 has a different purpose today than it had, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, etc. What it used to be was effectively the bypass or the main way to get from one side of the town to the other side. Now, it's more of somewhat of a local road. Sort of operates just like a local road. Yet we've got the remnants of a road that was, different thing, a completely different animal. So there's a challenge to what to do with it. During the Main Street shred, they showed a visualization here that we heard some complaints about because of the, they said, well, that's too heavy of a building, it can't be supported there. Okay, so we found out about that.
The underground.
Because the underground
drainage.
So that's an issue. But they thought about, they thought about putting in sidewalks, improving lighting, adding street trees.
Undergrounding power lines. Go ahead.
Yeah, you want to talk
Well, we're just saying that so the underground and the power lines keep going through the visualization.
Well,
and so we thought the best to do is go with that. That's fine. It's not like retrofitting 12, where 12 is a barrier between a great barrier between downtown and your college. It's really between your neighborhoods and your downtown. And the health of your downtown will support the need to retrofit 12. We feel, 182. We feel that 182 is kind of on a precarious moment right now. And that public investment is necessary. Great. And that's hard to do today, but the idea of the police station, fantastic. Put the police station, begin to hold the corner of Jackson and 182, that will help let people know that development is available here. We also say move the power lines. There's an ability to move the power lines to one side of the road. Move them all to the north side where everything is existing. The large power lines are existing, and you have all of the riparian and the landscape is more difficult to build on than the existing built side on the south side, and to repurpose the street from a bypass to a street. But we also know that if you put too many rules on this place, it'll sit the way that it is because there are too many rules on the place. So we want to be as flexible as possible with what's allowed. Housing. We think housing and office is great because of the slope. You can't do a lot of commercial there because you have to have the parking and you're going uphill. But we don't want your commercial, if you put it all commercial, which it is today, it would compete with your downtown. We don't want Lampkin or 182 to compete with downtown. We want them to be different. Therefore, we showed a lot of housing, and we think office and housing is your best bet. But commercial, open it up, be flexible. Whatever you can propose in there use-wise, so be it. But when you have a use, have standards associated with use. If you're going to build housing, build it this manner. If you're going to build office, build it this manner. If it's mixed use, have design standards so that everybody knows what to expect, both the developer making the proposal, the neighbors that live in the area, and the decision makers. And finally, we're saying, make it competitive for office and housing with greenfield areas around your city or south of 12 or up by the bypass. Don't make it competitive with your downtown. So it's a different place.
Excellent. And by the way, this is just a plan view of the actual roadway. This is just showing you could add bike lanes here. You can just have a couple lanes here, turn lanes periodically. It's plenty of right of way.
It's a safe route to School Street.
But once again, the nature of this street has changed, and so should what happens on it as far as development is concerned. All right. This was from the Main Street charrette about we have a game plan, so we're going to talk about next steps. As I said before, our job is to go back and go ahead and develop the code. We will submit a draft of the code to the city within 4 weeks. They'll have a couple of weeks to collaborate with us on revisions to the code, and then after that, we'll have a couple of weeks to make all the revisions to the code and then present it to the city at that point. So that's essentially where we're headed. As a reminder, you'll be able to find these visualizations as well as the plans and other things that we put in this presentation on this website. Are there any questions about what we've been up to?
Any questions from the public?
Or any?
Yeah, we'll move to the board members in a second.
And did I forget? Yes, sir.
We're talking about these 4 roads specifically. What about roads within the main roads we're talking about, like the side streets, areas within this area you're talking about? Will those areas be spoken of or not?
Well, the only side streets that we took on between the corridors were downtown, those 3 blocks that are right downtown from Jackson up to Lampville. But then once you get out into the corridors, such as the Cotton District, we didn't touch that. However, we have the ability, if so moved, to plug in the same type of zoning for those areas in the code because there's reserves for addition. We felt like this was what we were tasked to do by the city. Here's how we would do this, and we'll let you all figure out if you want to make it go further.
It would not be difficult to expand. So that's up for the city.
My question?
Yes, sir.
What is this going to cost the city of Starkville? All what you're talking about.
All right. Well, what it's going to cost once the code is implemented is
What's the
essentially.
code? What's so fast?
We haven't drafted the code yet. The code will be delivered within 4 weeks.
Okay.
Well,
In the meantime, what are we going to do?
You're going to sit patiently.
Okay. I really didn't like the plan. I really didn't.
Okay.
No, sir, I didn't. And I want to tell you why. 2-story buildings, residential, don't work. I've gone down University Drive too many times headed to my church. I have to look down 1,000 times, beer bottles all over the place, glass everywhere, garbage everywhere. Students are doing this kind of stuff. They're drunk. So, the main problem is have a code to enforce a tolerance level for alcohol. I designated the driver would be more important than spending a lot of money on this. We don't have it.
All right. Well, the money doesn't essentially kick in until the city decides to go ahead and make improvements in either the thoroughfare, the street, or the public frontage, and then the rest is private investment as far as what people do on their own. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I got one. I got a couple. What I take from this, and I thank you for, first of all, coming and doing this, and what I noticed really opened my eyes is what you call the great divide between the university and the city geographically, and the imperativeness of hopefully we can get cotton mills to come in the gold mine. You sit on the quadrants of where Comfort Suites, and seeing that visualization just helped. But anything we could do right there that we can do, I think the city's done all. Just go on record as saying we've done all we can to try to help that development. And I guess my question of that quadrant was you said you talked to the master planner. One of those shopping centers was sitting where there's some fraternities and sororities right there.
Well, no, it's actually
fraternities.
Right now, you'll notice that there's a drop-off. There's a lot of land sitting there that's not developed. So we didn't take any of the fraternities or the sororities. Our plan included their existing location.
Between the Alpha Gamma Row House and the highway? So
Yes.
That's what that was, in that slope right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
The neat thing about it, they didn't get into this very much, when you start looking at the overall amount of land with the current road design that's tied up, as opposed to altering that road design like they did in one of their images, you get about a third of the land on the cotton mill site that's freed up for private development on each side, which is an existing right-of-way.
With the cotton mill development, be on that site where there's it's a
Plaza?
to the university side between, it's basically a vacant parking lot or something. Is that Cotton Mill, or is that associated with that development?
Behind Cooley Building back towards Hampton.
I'm talking about exactly across from Comfort Suites.
No.
Across on Russell Street.
Yes.
No,
They don't own it,
They don't.
but they've talked about.
But that corner parcel there is not part of Cotton Mills.
Okay. Okay, and I'd say too, one of the challenges with Starkville is not only overhead infrastructure and things like that, but the, to and from campus, I guess everything kind of runs parallel with each other with the Highway 182, with the highway being the Strip 12, 182, and Russell. It is a challenge. But maybe any other ideas for that Great Divide? Anything to
Yes.
incorporate other than the bridge?
What we didn't say, we forgot to say, just because of time, was Russell Street we feel should be your, as he said, your biking and pedestrians university. Russell should be your complete street that has the transit, the biking, and the cars, and that's actually your main spine to and from the campus, because that's the best way to get into the campus as well. So we think that whatever development, however you can get better street frontage, improves the value of that land that we talked about that's not part of the con.
And let me be clear on the opportunity. If the city of Starkville gets excited about the idea of removing the Great Divide and putting the Grand Boulevard, or whatever you want to call it there, okay, if you're excited about it, and then if you've got the university president and the administration excited about it, and then you've got a local Mississippi Department of Transportation commissioner, Mike Taggart, excited about it, and if people in Washington, D.C. get excited about it because they're looking all over the United States for examples of how to turn these highways into multi-way boulevards, my guess is that you'll be in one of the first in line to receive one of what we call the Tiger Grant. And that would be something which would pay for it, which is the great injection of money and opportunity here.
Well, just so you know, all three were excited about it before we made that.
One final question, sir. On the lower part of the street, across the lake, everybody's trying to improve their homes, right? Except those students, they're getting drunk, throwing bottles everywhere, but the houses are nice. I was looking on my property today when I was cleaning it up, I found a golf ball, a brand new golf ball. I just howling out, throwing in, the dogs started howling, Dobermans and all kinds of vicious dogs that howling. I live on my own property, you know. I've been in down the road.
All right, well,
the current code within these parameters that you're talking about, is there a new formation codes overlap with these current C2, or will they just take the place?
our recommendation is that they would take the place, and then the big issue becomes what triggers compliance with the new code. That is to say, everything that exists today could exist there for hundreds of years into the future, so long as nothing has changed on the property. But if the property changes to a certain dollar value, that could be one way to measure it. Then all of a sudden, the new code would kick in and you'd have to follow those rules under that circumstance. That's going to be our recommendation. We don't think it makes sense to have one lot owner, try to do it, and another lot owner say, well, no, I'm not going to do it, and then the next one say yes, because then you can't get the character down the entire thoroughfare. And once again, we're just talking about 4 different streets essentially here in the entire city. There's plenty of other places where you don't have to do that at all. So it's a limited application.
All right, that's going to conclude the time we've got for public comments. Do we have any further comments from the board before we wrap this one up? Let me just make a general comment and say I've been very impressed with the work you've done, and I'm very excited about receiving the final product. And I think there's a lot of excitement generally in the community about that. Any comments from the board?
Well, and I'll say that too. I really appreciate the work you've done, and my thought from the very beginning of this is that it served as a foundational document for not only these corridors, but as David's talking about, other areas in this project area where we have great need. And so as we establish that vernacular, I think it will be very easy to do so. And so I appreciate the work that will help bring us full scale and all of that. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much. We believe you have a ton of potential here, and it looks, everything you've been doing lately is pretty impressive, so we're glad to be part of the effort.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. All right, and that will carry us to the consideration of a construction change order for Ellis Construction for the Pat Station project. And I believe Mr. Pritchard is going to make a presentation on that one.
Available for questions.
Okay. I guess I have just general questions. We made an extension just within the last couple of months. What is this request for an extension related to?
The initial extension was based upon permit issues that we realized at the start of the project, and then a few utility issues that we had on the east end of the project, termini. And we evaluated that with Mr. Kemp and company. At that time, Ellis actually requested, if I remember correctly, some 90-some-odd days, and we reduced that back. This request strictly addresses weather conditions during the latter part of March and April. And Ellis was available with equipment and personnel to work on the project. We had people out there assisting them in getting started, but in long story short, rained over 12 inches during that period. The frequency of the rains were such that we'd get a rain event within 2-3 days. Earth, ground conditions would get where they could work again, we'd get another rain event. So just climate conditions only, we felt like that they could not produce productive work during that period.
So is your opinion that it's merited?
It is my opinion that it's merited strictly from the rain and the climate conditions during that period.
Do they understand the sense of urgency that the city has with the project? I guess my reluctance on this is stacking what is probably the reasonable of the two potential exemptions on one that I thought was perhaps less reasonable, which was the first extension that we had.
You're correct, and absolutely. This was initially set up to be a calendar day contract with a fixed number of days for production on this project. We feel that this is warranted just because of the weather conditions. Mr. Robertson, Bill Robertson, is here representing, or was here. You still here, Bill? Bill is Vice President of Ellis Construction. We've been out here, and I emphasized to Bill some last week that he might want to be here to represent that company. We feel like productive work's being made now. There are clauses in the contract. Of course, Mr. Latimer could expand on the legal issues, but there are clauses that reference acts of God and unusual weather and unusual conditions, and we feel like that this falls in that category. If you read my letter also, we did not intend for this to address anyway the lack of production or lack of activity that we saw out of Ellis in the first part of this project.
Sure. Any questions, comments, discussion from the board?
Is it your opinion that 25 days is sufficient for the construction to complete and for this road to become ours?
For it to be completed?
Well, with the 25-day extension, calendar day extension that's being asked for here, contract is due, is it due March? Or when was the
extended date carried it into May, I believe, Mr. Bunis.
Right, and so with the, I mean, it's your opinion, though, that the 25-day extension will give them ample time to complete construction?
No, sir. It is my opinion that the 25 days is warranted because of weather conditions they experienced in March and April. Whether they finish within the allotted time that they have to do it is strictly up to Ellis Construction.
Well, are you going to
I am not warranting 25 days as being, this project being handed over to the city of Starkville.
Do you have an idea how long will it take?
And I think Mr. Robertson might best answer that. Yes. He's sort of in charge of schedule right now, Alderman Bone. Bill, you want to address that?
It's going to be awful tight to get through in another 25 days. Still have to get the curb installed, the paving, grading behind the curb, get the sidewalk, the striping, and the grading. I don't think we can pay to get it all done in that 25 days, no.
Well, why are y'all just only asking for 25 days? That's what I don't understand.
Well, you have to have justification to ask for an extension. Just because you feel you don't have enough time to get through, you can't ask for more time just because you don't have enough. Now, justification for this extension is because of the rainfall we had in the end of March and April. Some days away from it, some weren't.
Yeah, I can understand that, but my question is, when do you expect for what's the projection date for the completion date for this project? What's the projected completion date? Projected.
End of June, middle of July.
You know, I personally understand any reasonable request for an extension due to an act of God, but let me just emphasize, let's make sure that we move as diligently as we can. We hopefully may be moving towards some good weather in weeks to come, and you know, I think we need to try to proceed without having to come with any other maybe unwarranted requests in the future. Not say that this is unwarranted, but hopefully, you know, if the board grants this, that you know that you'll try to take the advantage of a lot of good days. I see a lot of projects or in the past, you know, when the weather is real hot, you don't see any movement or everything does a standstill, and you know, then when it rains, everybody wants to start working. So hopefully, you know, we'll if the board grants this, we we can get some movement. We deserve to see as much progress we can in very good weather. And but you know, Alderman Dumas, this is your ward, so I'm inclined to. What's your thoughts on this?
Mr. Pritchard, you gonna keep up with this, because will this be complete before school storms start again? You say the end of June, July, so that's 2 months.
If I could again address the alderman, you know, really under contract, your position as the owner and our position of the engineer is not to mandate or control the means and methods of the contractor. Right. The truth of the matter is, should Ellis Construction not elect not to work another day on this project, then we have nothing to do but enforce the contract, which does have liquidated damages in the tune of, I believe it was $500 a day, if I'm correct. So, you know, we would approach you only with change orders for time that are warranted, or change orders for money that are warranted due to the conditions out there. We can emphasize, as you have tonight, to Ellis to perform on this project, but there's very little that we can do to make them do that.
Mr. Mayor, let me say one thing. Let me just say this and I'll be done. I've thought I've been out of this meeting by now, but since I'm not, I'm going to make sure I represent the constituents and the taxpayers. We need to have as much progress as we can on these projects. I have seen when it's 80 and 90 and 95 degrees, just like with Street Olay in the past.
Yes, sir.
Nothing is done while the schools are out. By the time the universities get back in town, then they want to get it done. I used to say this. You know, when the weather is good, we expect Ellis Construction to get the work done. That's why we have the liquidated damages. Yes. I'm going to be, as an individual alderman, I'm going to vote to enforce the provision. I want them to pay up. That's why we have the liquidated damages. We want them to perform their work when the weather allows it. Now, if they don't want, you know, if they don't want to perform, then we want them to pay up. So, if the gentleman from 5, you know, this is primarily his ward, but you know, I'm inclined reluctantly to maybe support this extension tonight, but I don't want this request to come back to me again if there is, you know, if this matter has been standing still. So, you know, as I said, we're getting good weather. We want them to get out there on the job. You know, they're obviously the best and lowest bidder for this contract, and we want to see things happen in this city. That's why we award these contracts. We want to see progress. The residents don't want all these inconveniences over there. They don't want the dirt just sitting there like it is. You know, and plus the city of Starkville want this road to be completed. We have a lot going on. This is a progressive city. We went through a lot of things in past administration. We acquired land to develop that road. It's a major connector road, and we don't want this thing sitting still. I'm not going to vote for another extension if I vote for this one tonight. If it is determined that they're just allowing non-movement on this project. So they need to get the message that as from myself, that we need to have some forward movement, and we need to have a good work day on these projects. And I'm just saying this to all contractors, you know, because I just get tired of seeing these summer months where they don't do anything. They just sit there and just let the equipment sit, and I don't know what the problem be, but if the board wants to support this, I'll reluctantly support it. But I'm just going to have a very stern look at any future requests coming from this contractor.
Alderman
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can say that no better, and I too will reluctantly support any other change orders, and we've got to consider this as expeditiously as possible. With that, I'll move approval for change order number 2 for Ellis Construction for the Pat Station roadway extension project.
Alderman Divis made a motion to approve change order number 2 for the Pat Station roadway extension project as presented. Alderman Divis, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Divis, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Divis' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Saying aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
It's measured. Oh,
Oh, no. Aye.
let's do it one more time. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please respond by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. So, thank you, Mr. Pritchett. And if I'm not mistaken,
Mr. Mayor,
that will exhaust our written agenda. Alderman Vaughn.
I would like to adjourn this meeting to June 7, 2011, and here at City Hall at 5:30.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion to adjourn until June 7, 2011, 5:30 at 101 Lamford Street in City Hall courtroom. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Divis. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.